came out to tell us clearly if Africa can develop a common position
in terms of water resources. Actually, there is no boundaries. We need to join efforts.
So welcome to this European Union, United Nations Environment Programme, Africa Low Emissions Development Strategy project breakfast meeting. This breakfast has been organized really to give an opportunity to the member states or African countries who have been involved in this particular project to be able to share with us some of their experiences and obviously motivate other member states to uptake this particular initiative. So without much ado, I'll start with our speakers this morning and give them about 5 minutes to really share with us their perspectives. And then after that, we'll have an overview of the whole project, some of the lessons learned in Africa. And then the most important part really is to get some experiences from the member states that have been involved in this particular project. And then open the floor for a few minutes so that we can get some feedback from other representatives who are here. So straight away, I would like to call upon the Regional Director, UNEP Africa Office, Madam Juliet Biao, to give us a few remarks. Juliet, please.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is really a great pleasure to have you all today to this timely discussion as we putting our heads together in shaping a trajectory for a meaningful low emission development in Africa, one which ensure realization of the sustainable development goals we all aspire to. 2 months ago, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, convened the 2019 Climate Action Summit in New York. At the table was a straightforward agenda. How do we turn the commendable climate action commitment by the member state into tangible, ambitious implementation actions? Our meeting here today is occurring at a very interesting and opportune moment. We are meeting not only at the backdrop of the need for a pathway for an increase in ambitious climate action, but with the global stocktake around the corner. The global stocktake established under Article 14 of the Paris Agreement will assess our collective progress toward achieving the purpose of the Paris Agreement and its long-term goals. Already, the science tells us that progress is not where it's ought to be. The just published IPCC and the UNEP emission gap report further elaborates on that. all these scientific analyses are really telling us the urgent need to increase our ambition on climate change by threefold if we are to stay within the safe limits of 2.0 Celsius warming scenario, and by fivefolds if we are to achieve the best scenario of the 1.5 degrees Celsius recommended under the Article 2 of the Paris Agreement. But the big question is the how question. There exists a clear gap of restructure that informs the pathway to increase climate action ambitions that speak to the continent's peculiar challenges and opportunities. Considering that Africa's climate vulnerability is primarily caused by the prevailing low level of socioeconomic development, increased climate actions must respond directly to socioeconomic imperatives. It must respond to the need for food-secure homes, the need for income and job creation, the need for global competitive economies. Honorable ministers, I'm glad that through this EU-UNEP Africa LEDS project, the foundations and pillars of these structures for such meaningful increase in climate action ambition was established in partner countries. As we will get to hear from them in a short while, through this project, these countries have been equipped with a structure to inform optimal investment pathways for implementation of the NDCs commitments. Countries have analytical tools to inform policy trajectories that will ensure implementation of NDCs to maximize both climate aims and their socioeconomic imperatives. Countries have had practical demonstration on how they can invest in this trajectory at the project level. Through this work, the technical and technological capacity of countries have been enhanced to ensure they convert science to policies and policy to optimal investment that unlocks multiple benefits for the people. Through this work, the profile and the input of climate and environment has been raised. Decision makers no longer view environment action as a cost center, but as a source of practical socio-economic solutions. Solutions that enhance income and job opportunities, solutions that enhance food security through cutting post-harvest losses, solutions that enhance health by reducing indoor pollution. Through this project, the confidence and capacity of parties to the Paris Agreement is being enhanced to trigger organic implementation of the agreement to the benefit of the entire continent and the globe. Honorable ministers, I'm glad that this work is proving that countries can leverage on the NDCs to drive the priority socioeconomic aims, and by this, unlock realization of multiple SDGs. This work is proving that the support we get as a continent for our friends across the globe, like the European Economic Commission in this case, can achieve maximum return on investment by touching lives. By establishing structures that will ensure such benefits endure in the long term, it is my sincere hope that we will raise this bar even higher through our engagement today. It is my hope that our action here will reinforce this low emission and NDCs implementation paradigm that unlocks realization of socioeconomic imperatives. I believe all of you today, like myself, look forward to hearing more of this project from the project countries and proponents. We look forward to working with you all to scale out our successes in 7 countries and concretize the trajectory of meaningful climate action ambition in Africa. Honorable ministers, the ball is in our court, in your court, to set us going through an appropriate decision, declaration, and affirmation of EU-UNEP Africa LEDS project approach to NDCs and low emission development. We pledge our support to you. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Juliet, the Regional Director for UNEP's Africa Office. I would like now to call upon the representative of the European Union, Director Madam Astrid Shoemaker, to make her remarks.
Thank you very much, distinguished ministers, excellencies, dear colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm sure Richard Munang, who will explain what this project is about, will have an African proverb for us. And it must be something like us: if you want to achieve something, start early. And this is why we're here at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I sincerely appreciate that actually all of you came. This event today is not so much about us from the European Union talking, in fact, not at all. It's about us listening to you, to your experiences with this project that will be introduced in more detail in a moment and that Juliette has already talked about. And in a way, I also shouldn't really be here. We were really hoping that our Commissioner for Climate Change, who is paying great attention to this work, could have come, but as many of you may know, we're in a transition phase in Europe. We have the COP coming up in Madrid, and he is just very busy trying to get this sorted out. So once again, I will be brief, because what we really would like to do is hear the experiences of Cameroon, the DRC, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Kenya, Mozambique, and Zambia with this project. Now, just to say, it is of course clear that Africa has done very little to cause climate change, and yet it is Africa that is suffering most from climate change, and yet it is you that are also asked, like everybody else, to do your national determined contributions to, of course, do a lot about adaptation, but also as you move forward to industrialization, to ensure that you're not locked in development models that are carbon intensive. And how to do that in practice is not such an easy question, neither in Africa nor in Europe. It is important to have comprehensive analytical frameworks and modeling tools. And what this discussion is about is what are the ingredients of such analytical frameworks, who are the people that need to come together, and what are the modeling tools we need for this work. And what is really important, when this is done well, what the NDCs can achieve is climate mitigation and socioeconomic development simultaneously, difficult as that seems. So the idea of the LEDS project, or in general of low emission development strategies, is really to see how the NDCs can be leveraged to become enablers of countries' socioeconomic progress. This has also been identified clearly by the project participants as one of the benefits. And from our perspective, if the NDCs are approached in this manner, it becomes also a lot easier to make sure that they are fully aligned and an integrated part of national development strategies. And if that is achieved in turn, it becomes so much easier for the donor community to come together and support this work. And of course, it becomes a lot easier to develop credible investment plans. And if there is one socioeconomic challenge for Africa, but incidentally also for Europe, it is certainly the creation of jobs, and the creation of jobs for young people. So to have strategies and modeling tools that tell us what kind of economic pathways allow at the same time to mitigate, to limit climate emissions, and to create jobs in this perspective becomes very important. And of course, it is up to you as national policymakers You have the key role to determine what is the policy framework needed to enable systemic and tangible changes in the way we produce, we consume, and we run our businesses. And it's up to you to design the legal and economic incentives that we need for a consumption and production shift. And it is up to you to design and find the nature-based solution that brings such multiple benefits. But for all of that, as I said before, analytical framework and modeling is essential. Just to close, of course, you will know that in the European Union we have an intense discussion about how to move forward towards our own declared target of climate neutrality by 2050. Our own long-term vision will be submitted to the UNFCCC next year. We're in the process of updating our own NDCs. All of that is not really of interest today. We are focusing on the work that's going on here. I want to express my sincere gratitude, particularly to Dr. Richard Munang for the work done on the project, and I'm looking forward to hear all of the experiences that you have made. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Astrid. Quickly, I would like to call upon the representative of the African Union Commission. Mr. Hassan Nyambe is here from the African Union Commission. Mr. Nyambe, please.
Honorable Ministers, the representative of EU, would want to also add our voice on behalf of the African Union Commissioner responsible for agriculture and rural economy. Climate change is real, and it's actually an existential threat. We are aware that as a continent we are experiencing a number of challenges, some related to food insecurity, water insecurity, disasters that are actually impacting on our infrastructure and so forth. But at the end of the day, I think our concern is the fact that livelihoods, opportunities are shrinking, and most of our people are struggling basically to make a living. As such, we actually welcome approaches like those for the LEDS project, which are setting a trend or a sustainable development trend that we all want to emulate or that we appreciate. And having said that, we have also seen opportunities for collective learning that are being paved through this project. And we are therefore hoping that most of those lessons that are being generated by the project could be upscaled so that other countries who are not involved could also benefit. And you may also know that the African Union has actually come up with a post-harvest strategy or a strategy for reducing post-harvest losses, which is also talking to some of the results that we are seeing from this project. Therefore, we encourage all the member states to actually learn from this project, and we are grateful to the EU that they are funding such a groundbreaking project. I thank
you. Thank you, Mr. Nyambe. I'd like now to move on to the main thrust of our breakfast this morning, and I would like to call upon Dr. Richard Munang to give us a brief overview of the LEDS project. Dr. Munang.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, good morning. As Madame Astrid did say, the presentation is contextualized with the start of an African proverb, as you can see on the screen, that even as the archer loves the arrow that flies, so too he loves the bow that remains constant in his hand. When you put in the context of this EU-UNEP Africa LEDS project, it was premised on the fact that Africa has contributed least to the emissions, just about 2 to 3%, but stands out as the most vulnerable to climate change. And while vulnerability is driven by the prevailing low levels of socioeconomic development, communities cannot afford the goods and services they need to buffer against climate change. And so climate change action and socioeconomic development are to Africa what the bow and arrow are to the hunter. They are inseparable. This is the context in which this EU-UNEP Africa LEDS project was undertaken and whose accomplishment we'll be sharing with you today. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, increased ambition was the key outcome of COP22 in Marrakech. During this time, when the global community of nations adopted the outcomes of COP22, a reaffirmation of commitment to fully implement the Paris Climate Change Agreement, concurrent with this COP was the start of this EU-UNEP Africa LEDS project. Africa's commitment to increase ambition was actually what this set out to do. This project set out to showcase practically how can the nationally determined contributions be implemented in such a way that climate aims are actually achieved, but at the same time socioeconomic challenges like food insecurity, like more incomes in more pockets, actually also achieved at the same time. Excellencies, this ambition and zeal displayed by the continent set a high threshold for all low emissions development. And that is what this Africa LEDS project set out to do, to respond directly to addressing socioeconomic challenges, helping countries lower their emissions, but at the same time also ensure that they can be able to unleash socioeconomic pathways to create more opportunities. And this EU-UNEP Africa project was operationalized in this context. It involved three components. The first component was to practically show on the ground how can we turn the actions into reality and leverage on those practical results to help inform policies, but in such a way that we're using a system thinking approach where agriculture, clean energy, that constitutes 70% of all the NDCs of the countries in the continent, can actually speak to one another and link to sectors like transport, like waste, like trade, in a way that can foster that systematic thinking. But these grand actions demonstrated practical actions that are today using to inform policy. The second component was that to inform investments, there needs to be a structure that drives science to inform policy, but also having actions on the ground that upstream to inform those policies. And this project actually established a structure for science policy making to inform optimal NDCs for the first time in the entire African continent. And the countries that were involved were the 7 countries that we've already heard today. But to get straight into what this project actually did, in these 7 countries, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the project happened in these 7 countries. As I said, combining the 70% of all the NDCs in the area of clean energy, in land-based actions of climate-smart agriculture, forestry, waste, transport, leveraging on the practical actions on the ground to help leverage on these modeling structures that were supposed to help inform investment. If you take Cameroon, for example, that implemented Component 1 and Component 2, which the delegate from Cameroon is going to further expand on this, it shows that the NDC's implementation focus on greening the entire agro value chain and focusing on the agro value chain, but leveraging on clean energy like solar dryers to add value, but developing a tool and leveraging on the sectors that can be able to bring in youth, like information communication technology, to cover 5 agroecological zones, and leveraging on this data, a decision support system to inform investment showed that if Cameroon was to invest in a low emissions development pathway, they can be able to create up to about 13 million assorted jobs along the entire agro value chain, combining clean energy, information communication technology, transport, and lowering their emissions 8 times than could have been done without that. For example, in Cote d'Ivoire, the same shows that if you are able to convert agricultural waste to domestic energy and biofertilizer, this will not only reduce deforestation, but actually be able to provide economic front that will save up to about $300 per hectare each year and result in up to about 100% yield. In DRC, the DRC model showed that the country can save up to about 5,000 hectares of natural forest per year if the paradigm of waste to briquettes is scaled out and replicated nationally. In Mozambique, which we hear from the delegation of Mozambique here on exactly how the results actually help integrate it into policy. and advance the ambitions in terms of recalibrating how to address socioeconomic challenges, the results showed that if you are able to leverage on solar power irrigation as compared to diesel power and expand conventional aspects, turning that and leveraging on ecosystem-based adaptation, you can actually be able to reduce emissions by up to about 70%. In Kenya, the same, resulting to about 2.9 tons of carbon that can be reduced if you combine nature-based approaches and take up alternatives like modern cook stoves, which could reduce household expenditure by 23%. In Ghana, the same approach was used. In Zambia, the same approach was used, showing that investing in assisted natural regeneration with clean cook stoves, minimize deforestation, enhances regeneration, and solar hydro mini-grids would add up to about 15 million into gross domestic product. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the results from this project are already informing country policies. For example, in Cameroon, it's informing investments implementing the country's greening and digitalization policy. In Cote d'Ivoire, the model runs as set to fit into investments in implementing the national agricultural investment plans. And in the DRC, the model results are set to inform investment decisions in the government policy on promoting the use of modern biomass. In Ghana, this is expanding to drive the country's policy of incentivizing investment in clean cook stoves. With all these results, excellencies, distinguished delegates, this African proverb, around a flowering tree, there are many insects. What the results did really show, and what this African proverb contextualized here, is that good things do attract attention. It is no different with this Africa LEDS project, where the peer-to-peer exchanges, which constituted component 3, countries were brought together that were not actually part of this project to share and exchange ideas based on the results that this project generated. But cumulatively, the outcomes of this project that were quite very, very interesting were fourfold. The first was, with the Paris Agreement stocktake around the corner, this work provided a logic for countries across the continent to emulate in revising their nationally determined commitments. And in this case, if you take clean energy, not implemented in silo, but implemented in a way that can be adding value to what is done using nature-based approaches to drive agricultural production and connecting to market, leveraging on information communication technology. This way, if you take the example from Mozambique, proved that combining energy and agriculture could sequestrate 70%. This work is a tool that could be used by member states to actually enhance their Paris Agreement stocktake. The second aspect, excellencies, distinguished delegates, that this project actually contributed to is that policy is the biggest driver of change. But implementing policy in silos costs more than implementing policies in a harmonized and synergistic way. And with this work, countries started putting in place frameworks so that the Ministry of Environment can be able to work with the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Forestry and Transport to be able to drive optimal implementation of NDCs. The third aspect, excellencies, distinguished delegates, is we are in a continent with over 12 million youth that graduate into the labor market each and every year and competing with fewer jobs, about 3 million jobs. What this project showed is that it did not only develop a structure, but also engage young people to be able to engage in the areas that are attractive to them. Information communication technology, like in the case of Cameroon, where now they're now coming in to drive NDCs, but from where they have a comparative advantage. And this is an example that this project has actually brought forth. And the last is the work established a timely foundation for ramping up intra-South-South cooperation with countries in the continent to drive low emissions. But what we do know, as typified in this African proverb, is that hunger can only be suppressed by eating. That hunger can only be suppressed by eating. The increasingly loud calls for increasing climate ambition can only be certified by taking concrete actions. And this is what the EU-UNEP Africa LEDS project did by supporting establishment of a structure for science, for increased climate ambition. This is what the project delivered. And we think from this results, concrete results in driving transformation, the Africa LEDS project is a worthy investment for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mnang. I think it's that time that now we should really listen to the countries who have been involved in this to be able to share with us some of their experiences. I believe most of the countries are represented here, and I would like to start by calling upon the representative of Mozambique. If you could come to the podium, please. After Mozambique, we'll follow with Cameroon.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is such an honor to join all of you in this important event. We, as Mozambique, want first of all to express our gratitude to the United Nations Environment Programme to cover this event and for their extremely warm hospitality. We want also to thank the European Union for finding the African Low Emission Development Strategy, which contributed to provide us with technical and scientific support to the national determined contributions. Mozambique is a testimony of the climate change events and the severe impacts they can produce, limiting the ability to attain the sustainable development goals. Mozambique's climate priorities in its national determined contributions aims for energy between adaptation and mitigation with the end goal of ensuring opportunity to combat poverty, create more incomes, and enhance socioeconomic transformation and competitive enterprise. It is for this reason that we appreciate the EU-UNEP Africa Low Emission Development Project, which came in at the right time in reinforcing an approach to NDC implementation that prioritizes accelerated socioeconomic transformation. Through this project, we developed an analytical tool building on our suite of existing models that can, for the first time, simultaneously forecast the climate and socioeconomic impacts of alternative NDCs implementation trajectories. This has ensured we maximize on our past investment in modeling infrastructure, the hardware, software, as well as technical capacity. The results of this EU-UNEP Africa LEDS project are already informing our development policy, including the NDC. Our National Irrigation Institute under the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security is preparing proposal to scale out solar powered irrigation across the country based on the modeling results. The impacts of the project on capacity building include: first, capacity for bridging science, policy, implementation gaps was enhanced on the multiple levels. Our in-country expertise for climate modeling was enhanced to go beyond forecasting environmental impacts to simultaneously forecasting climate and socio-economic impacts. 2, opportunity to share lessons. Mozambique also got to share lessons with peer countries. This drew from the effectiveness of our team in adapting the RED Abacus model to run agroforestry project level scenarios and on linking it with the LEAP model to provide an integrated picture of impact across sectors. Third, in addition, our academic institution, the Edward Mondlane University, represented here by the professor, which was our technical lead in this project, was appointed as peer learning champion institution in the project peer exchange platform called the Afolu Community of Practice. The capacity of our youth for low emission development was also enhanced. Our postgraduate students from different disciplinary backgrounds, forestry, agriculture, and energy system had their skills adapted to lead in combining the RED and Abacus models. I conclude by noting that the EU-UNEP Africa LEDS project intervention has supported Mozambique to maximize its existing modeling investment for climate action that drives realization of socio-economic opportunities. These are a core solution to Mozambique's high vulnerability. Therefore, we sincerely thank the EU-UNEP and all partners for this very timely intervention that sets our country on the path of meaningful resilience. Finally, equally call on the EU and UNEP to build on this project's results and leverage it as a framework to extend similar opportunity continentally. Thank you for the attention and obrigado.
Thank you very much, the representative of Mozambique. Next, we have Cameroon. If they're ready, please, Cameroon. And then after Cameroon, Kenya, to be ready.
And it's important to know that our sectors of focus are agriculture, energy, forestry, and transport, amongst other key sectors. Distinguished ministers, Cameroon, as has been said, is a beneficiary of the LED project, and we've successfully implemented this project and using it as one of the significant enablers to convert a high-level plans into very actionable investment policy trajectories. Specifically, Cameroon focused on 2 local councils or municipalities in Jacquerie and Ngolomakong, for those who know these, and located in very distinct ecological zones. And this was to practically, empirically show how, as a country, we can invest to green our agro-value chains by combining the use of climate-resilient cultivation approaches, clean energy, and ICTs. I think Richard specified this very clearly, and the components within which, in which we were involved in the overall regional project. The results from the ground action were then fed into an analytical model to extrapolate on a wide scale the long-term impact of such an investment in all the 5 agroecological zones of the country. It's interesting to note that from this extrapolation and projection, we had some interesting results. It shows that Cameroon can create 5 million more assorted jobs along its agro value chains and in the ICT. In fact, this will cover to a very large extent more than 40% of the youth population. And as well as in clean energy and transport, compared to what business as usual in these sectors and working independently can achieve. With regard to emissions, the projections also showed that a transformative approach will result in 8 times lower emissions than the business as usual. And in fact, the country will break even on its investment cost by 2021. We're just looking at 2 years forward. So this model gives a convincing case for the extent to which the NDCs can completely transform our current development pathway. I would also like to share with you, and I think I did some of this yesterday, a major impact of this program in terms of building capacity internally, which I think is a major challenge we need to overcome in the implementations of the NDCs. I may not go fully into this, but what is important is that the results from this project are being used to inform the ongoing reforms of our growth and employment strategy. And you would find out that this is a major national planning process that is coordinated by the target sectors we want to bring into this process: the ministries of planning, economy and planning, and the ministries of finance. And so in terms of bringing this into that process, not only are we engaging with those sectors, but through those sectors, ensuring that the key sectors of focus in the process are also internalizing and mainstreaming the priorities of the NDCs in their planning processes. Cameroon is probably, and you must be aware of this, going through a crisis situation in terms of how we can decentralize our development. And currently we are discussing reform process for empowering local councils and municipalities and regional bodies we intend to put in place. And so this is timely and is definitely informing that process, and will ensure that we can take this to local levels. And I think that the decentralization process is a major entry point for NDCs. I think I laid emphasis on this yesterday in terms of building capacity of the youth, or the younger generation. Within this project, in developing the models especially, of course, we needed experts from universities, but then this provided a leeway to engage with students and the youth. And you can see, in fact, my experience in other sectors is modeling is not, the capacity for modeling nationally is really weak. But within this project, you can see a constituency of young generations that are developing their capacity, because they were involved in this project, in understanding how you can use the modeling approach for planning and for projecting and future trends. I think this is a major capacity building effort that has come out of the NDCs. Without wasting much of your time, we can state convincingly that this project is a major, it's been a major enabler in our development pathway, and we can only thank the UNEP and thank our EU partners for the opportunity of being part of this regional initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Patience. As I mentioned, we'll have Kenya next, and if we can keep it brief, please. And then after Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, if you can get ready.
Good morning, everybody. I will keep it brief. I think the presenters have said quite a lot. First, I would like to thank EU, UNEP, and the partners who made this project possible. In Kenya, it has increased our analytical capacity. The team has created an analytical tool to inform implementation investment decisions to protect forests and the ecosystem. I think it has been mentioned an example, for example, of what they did. Having used the tools, they looked at modern, clean cooking stoves, which showed that it reduces by 23% the household use of energy. 2.9 million tons of charcoal was saved annually. And when upscaled, the model says we'll be saving 1 billion by the year 2030. With this model, Kenya is better placed to make optimal decisions on key land-based in areas such as forestry and domestic energy. And therefore, we say the model or the project is ready for replication in other countries, and we are ready to also move it to other sectors. And once again, I say thank you to EU and UNEP and the partners who made this possible, and all of you for listening to me. Thank you.
That was really brief. Okay, thank you, Kenya. Could we have Côte d'Ivoire, and then after that, Zambia?
Bonjour tout le monde. Excellence, donc excusez-moi, je vais parler en français. I speak in French. So, Excellence, mesdames et messieurs les ministres, Excellence, Madame la Présidente de l'AMCEN, si elle est là, distingués membres des délégations, au nom de ma chef de délégation, Madame le directeur du cabinet, représentant Monsieur le ministre de l'Environnement et du Développement durable, je vous adresse les salutations justement de Monsieur le ministre qui a été empêché au tout dernier moment et qui vous transmet ses salutations chaleureuses. Il vous présente ses excuses pour son absence. La Côte d'Ivoire, à l'instar de tous les pays du monde, a proposé sa contribution nationale déterminée au niveau du climat à la veille de la COP 21 à Paris. Notre ambition est de réduire nos émissions à l'horizon 2030 de 28% Et le focus sera mis sur 3 secteurs prioritaires: l'agriculture, foresterie, l'énergie et les déchets. Et justement, le projet Africa LEDS s'est orienté sur ces 3 secteurs, avec, comme Dr Richard Mougan l'a indiqué, 2 composantes. Une composante démonstration et une composante modélisation de notre stratégie de développement bas carbone LEDS. La démonstration s'est faite dans 2 villages. Dans une zone forestière en Côte d'Ivoire et dans une filière agricole très consommée, notamment le riz. Et la démonstration a consisté à appliquer auprès de 200 riziculteurs une pratique agricole intelligente bas carbone. Et les résultats que nous allons présenter ici pourraient être utilisés, pourraient être implémentés dans d'autres pays, parce que les résultats indiquent 2 choses importantes. Premièrement, l'application de ces pratiques a entraîné une baisse de l'utilisation des semences de 80%. Cela implique une baisse du coût de production et le supplément des semences peut être utilisé pour la consommation et même pour la commercialisation. Le deuxième résultat important que nous voudrons également partager, c'est le rendement. L'application de ces pratiques intelligentes utilise 100% de biofertilisants et avec une maîtrise de l'eau en zone de bas-fond. Et nous avons eu, si vous voulez, un doublement de rendement. Donc au niveau pratique, voici les résultats que nous avons eus. Autre élément, c'est le volet valorisation des déchets. En aval, les pailles de riz après la récolte ont été transformées en biofertilisants, en compost, par les paysans eux-mêmes sur les champs écoles, et cela a entraîné justement le résultat que je viens d'indiquer. En amont, les balles de riz ont été transformées en briquettes combustibles qui sont avérées très compétitifs par rapport aux autres sources de combustion au niveau des ménages et au niveau des restaurants. La deuxième composante a porté sur la modélisation. À ce niveau, près de 40 chercheurs et décideurs politiques ont été impliqués dans la modélisation LEDS. Et le modèle a été établi, qui nous a donné des résultats très intéressants également, qui nécessitent un partage avec les autres pays. Et ce modèle intégré nous a présenté à la fois les meilleurs choix, les meilleurs scénarios climatiques dans la filière riz, énergie, déchets, mais surtout a présenté des résultats très clairs en termes de création d'emplois et en termes de création de revenus. Autre élément important aussi qu'on voudrait partager, c'est la mise en place d'un groupe de recherche et l'implication des étudiants, des doctorants, dans le cadre de ce projet. Donc, au total, nous avons actuellement 5 doctorants qui sont en instance de soutenir dans le cadre de ce projet. 2 leçons importantes apprises qu'on pourrait échanger également avec vous. D'abord, c'est la coopération entre les décideurs politiques et les chercheurs. Donc, pour une fois au moins, le projet a permis... OK, thank you. Donc, le projet a permis justement d'instaurer le dialogue entre les chercheurs et les décideurs politiques. Je pense que ça, c'est très important à souligner. Autre leçon apprise, c'est l'engagement des paysans dans des pratiques bas carbone au regard des co-bénéfices observés de façon tangible. Les prochaines étapes, rapidement. Les prochaines étapes, c'est que la Côte d'Ivoire a décidé d'actualiser ses NDC. Et je pense que les résultats du projet LEDS vont éclairer justement l'actualisation qui va nous amener à élaborer notre stratégie de développement bas carbone et de croissance verte en Côte d'Ivoire. Donc je pense que c'est les prochaines étapes. Voici ce que nous pouvons dire. Et la toute dernière étape, c'est justement d'élaborer un plan d'action. Le projet nous a aidé à élaborer le modèle. Nous allons élaborer la stratégie bas carbone, mais ensuite un plan d'action bien chiffré qu'on pourra justement passer à l'échelle. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Cote d'Ivoire. Quickly, if I could call upon Zambia, and after Zambia, DRC.
In terms of undertaking the low emissions development strategy. I'll just highlight a few things in terms of the context. In terms of the context, our NDCs were essentially represent overarching low emission development plans that were committed, that as a country we are committed and were packaged within the 7th National Development Plan and the Vision 2030 of the country. So basically, these are our high-level economic development blueprints to ensure Zambia attains high middle-income status by 2030. In terms of how it was integrated, our NDCs are tools for achieving our socioeconomic imperatives. Among priorities targeted by achievement by 2030 is to synergize adaptation and mitigation. This covered key sectors such as the forestry, climate-smart agriculture, upscaling, renewable energy, among others. We are set to review our commitments for the post-2030 period among key gaps that need to be bridged in order to strengthen our capacity in terms of data-driven policy making. This is primarily critical to ensure we prioritize our investment in areas that maximize both environmental and socio-economic benefits. I'll quickly go to the entry into this project. We want to thank EU and UNEP for this project intervention, where we established a decision support structure that will ensure that our NDC's implementation investments align with unlocking our primary socioeconomic priorities. These include achieving food security, creating income and jobs for our youth, and expanding our economy. Our team innovated and managed to maximize the benefits of models we already know, to go beyond climate and include socioeconomic aspects. I'll quickly jump to the impact in terms of the results to policy. This model and the integrated approach demonstrated by the project has been taken up by the Council of Ministers as provided in the Zambia National Policy on Climate Change, which was formulated in 2016. Results are on track to inform updates to our NDC commitments and implementation of small-scale renewable energy and forest regeneration projects in the country. Impact of the project in terms of capacity development, we thank you again that this project in terms of our capacity for bridging science, policy, implementation gaps has been enhanced, primarily from the dimension of ensuring that we do as environmental stakeholders, ends up informing and contributing to mainstream socioeconomic development in the country. In conclusion, our sincere appreciation goes to the EC, the UNEP, and all partners for this timely intervention, and we call upon them to further upscale this intervention on the continental scale, and we are happy to share our lessons even as we continue to escalate implementation. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Zambia. Do we have a representative of DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo? If not, then I would call on the last speaker, Eddie from Ghana, if you could come and say a few words.
Your Excellencies and all distinguished guests, I'm glad to be presenting this for Ghana. And I'd like to start with acknowledging UNEP and the European Commission for their support for this project. Now, as many of you may be aware, Ghana enjoys a very enviable position when it comes to electricity access. I mean, as of the beginning of this year, we have about 86% of our households enjoying access to electricity. But then when it comes to the cooking fuel sector, there we are lacking because only about a quarter of the country has access to gas for cooking. So several of our households, I mean more than 70%, rely on firewood and charcoal. And many of the stoves they use are very inefficient stoves. So because of that, our project looked at the improved cook stove sector, which has implications for forestry and therefore climate change, but also the implications on health, income generation, and some other key benefits. So what we did was to develop a model that builds on existing energy and climate models, so to integrate these models to look at how investing in improved cook stoves could impact some of the key sectors that are of concern to our government. And these are the key numbers. So we looked at investing in 2 million improved cook stoves for the cook stove sector. And some of the key parameters that we realized are as follows. Now, doing this would lead to recovering at least 12,000 hectares of forest lands every year. I mean, this is every year. So if you look at it for 10 years, it will be about 120,000 hectares of forest recovered. Now, this will lead to the sequestration of 85% more carbon than the business as usual practices as they exist today. And then it will also, on the economic front, lead to the creation of over 6 million jobs. These are very exciting numbers. And cumulative revenues of over $130 million up to the year 2030. Then on the socioeconomic front, this is very important because it's going to lead to the reduction of deaths that arise as a result of indoor air pollution by about 1,400 per year by 2030. So these are very exciting numbers that we got from the model. With regards to policy, these numbers will serve to deepen the policy discourse and then the need for government to continue to invest on the improved cook stove sector so that we are able to realize some of these benefits that we have come up with. Now, the project has served to deepen the modeling capacity of our experts that worked on this project, and we want to build on this going forward. We want to sincerely thank the European Commission and UNEP and all other partners for supporting us and for the very timely intervention that provides us with tools to be able to meaningfully ratchet up our climate change ambition. Of course, we want to do more, and so we will call for support so that some of the other sectors that are of importance to the NDCs will be able to go ahead and then work on some of those as well. Thank you very much.
Session this morning, which will be more of the closing remarks. And at this point, then, I would like to call upon our Deputy Executive Director for UNEP, Madam Joyce Musuya, to come and share a few perspectives.
Good morning, Excellencies, ambassadors, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you, David and Richard, for inviting me to say perspectives. I will not try to close a very rich conversation and feedback. It's been very good to sit down and to listen to member states, 6 out of the 7 countries that presented. But what I would say is from UNEP's perspective, one, we are very delighted that we've partnered with the EU, Astrid and the team. We express our heartfelt thanks for this partnership, which goes beyond science, but really work at the country level. So thanks to the EU. To member states, very, very many thanks for sharing your perspectives, your lessons. I would like to build on the point that was raised by the delegate from Kenya, I think from Finance Ministry. I think today it's fair we've heard a lot on the what the project has delivered in different countries, NDCs, climate change, capacity building, modeling, youth, jobs creation. If we are to support the transition from a project to program to scale, we also need to share more on the how, but also recognizing that each country is different, and even within the country, there are sub-country nuances that have to be taken into consideration. 2, building on what member states also have mentioned, there were lots of feedback on capacity building, how the 2 components of the projects have actually helped to bring different sectors at the table to help implement the NDCs, help us help the countries more by sharing the results, the concrete results quantitatively or qualitatively. So when I'm trying to ask Astrid for more money, that will empower me to get more support for the member states. But in sum, I want to thank the team. Thank you for giving us a lot of feedback. This has been very, very helpful, and it's been extremely delightful to hear, especially from the member states. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joyce. And then I would like to call again Astrid, if based on the feedback from the member states, if you have a few final remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's of course always a wonderful feeling to speak after Joyce, because you can be perfectly relaxed, because you know the important thing has already been said and you can just agree with the points she has made. But I just wanted to say from our perspective, of course, first of all, again, thank you very much to the countries that shared their experience with us today, and to Dr. Richard Munang for guiding and leading this project. From my perspective, we got a number of very clear messages today. They have been summarized by Joyce, but I still want to say what I found extremely valuable to hear this morning was the concrete examples of how the low carbon pathways are actually better than business as usual, not just for carbon, but for all the other challenges that countries are facing. And the examples that came from Cameroon, for example, from Mozambique, were, I would say, truly heartwarming, if you so want. And I think we also very clearly heard the message that there's need for more peer learning, for sharing experience, for South-South exchanges, also in an intra-African context. And if we can be part of it and can facilitate that as European Union, that would of course be wonderful. I would love to be able to respond already today to Joyce and promise some kind of concrete project follow-up. I'm not in the position to do that yet, but on the other hand, we are in a constant policy dialogue with UNEP. We expect their proposals very soon. And just to repeat, we have heard the call for sharing, for scaling up, for peer learning, and I take that home with me, and I look forward to further work in this area. And then let's just maybe close with a new African proverb, which was created this morning. And that new African proverb, which should stay with all of us, is very simple. Climate action is an investment opportunity. Let's always remember that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Astrid. I think we have come to the end of our program this morning.